Covering the countless number of glitches in various fighting games has become somewhat of a trend on the channel over the past year or so, and what better game to check out now than one of the genre's greats, Street Fighter II. As of recording this video, the original cast of World Warriors are about to celebrate their 35th anniversary, so I thought it would be interesting to explore the many errors that crept their way into the game. For clarity's sake, I'm getting my information from a so-called glitch handbook on combovid.com. Published 16 years ago by Street Fighter modding legend Era 1, who you should check out on YouTube by the way, this document contains information pertaining to bugs within the engines of Street Fighter II's many revisions, and I'll leave a link in the description if you would like to read it for yourself. Despite searching high and low for glitches in Super Turbo HD Remix and Ultra Street Fighter II, I wasn't able to find anything outside of some rollback bugs that stem from spotty online connections, so we'll primarily be focusing on World Warrior all the way to Super Turbo. Also, some glitches are relatively minor and they can be explained pretty quickly, whereas others require elaborate explanations as to how they work, so some of these segments will be quite short. Make sure to stretch those muscles, dear viewer, and prepare for the glitches of Street Fighter II. Unlike later revisions, the first 3 Street Fighter II titles were powered by Capcom's CPS-1 arcade board, a piece of technology first put to use in 1988's Forgotten Worlds, with our first glitch taking its name from said board. Under normal circumstances, there's no way for you to chain light normals into their medium or heavy counterparts, but with the power of CPS-1 chains, we can beat this restriction to a pulp. Select a character who can perform rapid light kicks, and during the attack's hit stop, press the light button in tandem with the punch button you want to chain into. If successful, your light attack will cancel into the punch, leading to a true combo. Thankfully, CPS-1 chains aren't very hard to pull off, and you'll be able to make them consistent with some practice. In a vacuum, this is a neat way to execute otherwise impossible combos, but it's gone on to influence what we know today as the Magic series, a system where normals can freely chain into those of ascending strengths, Street Fighter Alpha 3's Xism, and Omega Street Fighter 4's depiction of Guile. CPS-1 chains obviously aren't required to enjoy playing the original Street Fighter II variants, but they definitely laid the groundwork for future fighting game innovations, and I had a great time experimenting with all sorts of combos. In a similar vein to CPS-1 chains, jump cancelling is the art of cancelling a normal into a jumping strike, with an extensive write-up on SonicHurricane.com explaining how this takes place. If the joystick is held upwards during a chain combo, the aggressor will jump as soon as their attack recovers, allowing them to quickly link into a rising attack. If you've ever seen a video where the player damages the enemy and then cancels their recovery frames into a jump, then you've seen a jump cancel taking place. Difficulty-wise, I find this to be far stricter than the previous glitch, at least when attempting heavies. Cancelling Guile's light kick chains into a jumping light kick isn't too bad, but if you want to tack on a medium or heavy normal, your inputs have to be much cleaner. The aforementioned write-up claims that, since all light attacks cause the same amount of hit stun, and since all rapid-fire weak attacks become cancelable immediately after impact freeze, the substantially diversified recovery periods don't factor into their jump cancel frame advantage potential. In layman's terms, the type of light attack you use doesn't really matter too much, so if you ever want to make a combo video, I urge you to master these. Even if you don't enjoy playing as Dhalsim, I have a feeling you've been on the receiving end of his Yoga teleport mix-ups, and don't worry, I've been too. But that begs the question, what happens when he decides to permanently break the space-time continuum? To find out, boot up World Warrior and attempt a medium or heavy kick Kara cancel into heavy Yoga Flame. The most consistent way to do this is by pressing both attack buttons at roughly the same time, and if it worked, Dhalsim will completely disappear. At this point, he won't be able to move or press any buttons, but his opponent can still freely act as they wish. Certain attacks will force him to block, and others will make him whole again, but these effects are dependent on who he's battling. I guess you could try and use this at the end of a round to time a scam, but outside of this theoretical usage, I can't imagine that this glitch would genuinely be useful. It looks amazing, however, and I can only wonder how confused poor Zangief is at the sight of his opponent vanishing in the blink of an eye. This next talking point was once believed to be a glitch, but later was revealed to be entirely intentional. If you keep inputting Hadokens with either Ryu or Ken, one of them will eventually become red. Future entries turned this red fireball, or Shakunetsu Hadoken, into a proper move that could be performed by a variety of fighters, but in the original Street Fighter II, no such move exists. With how the changing color appears from out of nowhere, many players assumed it to be a simple error relating to color palettes within the game's sprite data, but on September 18, 2013, legendary game designer Akira Nishitani revealed that this was an Easter egg. I assume this was done for excitement purposes, and I can imagine a bunch of 90s kids telling their friends about the mythical red fireball they swear they saw. Even though the red fireball isn't a glitch, I still wanted to include it as it's a fascinating part of Street Fighter history, one that was officially adopted down the line. Moving back into actual glitch territory now, it's time to examine Blanca. He might elicit a groan from competitive players, but he's my mum's favourite Street Fighter character, so I can't help but love him. Anyway, you have to input a Blanca ball, and on hit or block, execute another one just before he touches the floor. If you did it right, he'll somehow perform an aerial Blanca ball, albeit one with no hitbox. As far as I can tell, you can loop this infinitely as long as you aren't interrupted, but as it doesn't deal damage, I don't believe this glitch serves a purpose in real matches. Attempting it is good fun, however, and it makes me think about why the game allows Blanca to initiate a special move before returning to a grounded state. Perhaps it thinks he's hit the floor early? I'm not too sure if I'm being honest, but I'd still suggest you give it a go if the opportunity ever arises, even if it's just to confuse your friends. For those more interested in the technical types of glitches, allow me to introduce you to one of Street Fighter's most obscure mechanics. I'm sure we are all familiar with hitboxes and hurtboxes in fighting games, but if you play an old version of Street Fighter 2 on the CPS-1 board and enable a hitbox viewer, you'll occasionally spot these yellow boxes during specific animations. These are weak boxes, and if a character is struck within the yellow area, they take damage. For whatever reason, one of these can be found during Ryu's Dizzy animation, specifically on the frame where he leans forward all the way. Though they were phased out of the series from Super Street Fighter 2 onwards, they did make a return for Hyper Street Fighter 2, with Error 1 including a screenshot that highlights the difference between Ryu's. The chance of stunning Ryu and then attacking on this particular frame is extremely slim, but if you can pull it off, the damage boost reward is huge. Oh yeah, it's time to cover the iconic bonus stage where you beat up someone's unattended car. Playing through this normally is one of the most cathartic experiences one can have in their lifetime, but if you want to take things to the next level, stop attacking the vehicle when the hit sparks turn red, meaning this side of the car can no longer take damage. At this point, you should face away from the car and perform an attack while jumping backwards. You'll know that you did it right when your character is permanently frozen in the air, forever doomed to run down the clock. This setup sounds easy, but trying to jump back in a mode where you can freely turn left and right is harder than you would think. Error 1 uploaded a video detailing what this looks like in multiplayer, and the second character can move the initiator towards the side of the car or even interrupt their animation. If your character is stuck like this when the timer hits 0, the game soft locks and no further progress can be made, so I wouldn't recommend doing it on actual hardware. One of the series' simplest quirks is by far the most RNG dependent, and like with the red fireball, it's more of a developer Easter egg. Exclusively found within World Warrior, pressing any attack button has a 1 in 512 chance of triggering a special move, as well as inputting nothing leading to a 1 in 512 chance of blocking. Unlike today, where we know everything about a fighting game before it even releases, arcade fighting games in the 90s had an air of mystery surrounding them, preventing audiences from being aware of their finer details. With the intention of wowing players through instant special moves, the 1 in 512 calculation was included within the game's programming, and although I love this idea within the confines of an old school fighter, attempting to catch it while recording took me forever. If you think RNG mechanics are the best thing since sliced bread, I hate to rain on your parade, but this feature was removed from future revisions. You're gone, but not forgotten, one-button specials. At the risk of sounding like a salesman, have you ever wanted to connect with a sweep but keep your opponent standing? If so, then this next glitch is for you. Anyway, if you land a move that keeps the enemy standing with a knockdown strike on the same frame, the standing property is carried over to the knockdown. It even works against airborne opponents, as this sequence will force them to recover. Theoretically, there are 1,000,001 different ways to initiate this bug, but to be honest, I would rather keep the knockdown. You can score some strong Oki in these old fighting games, especially in the corner, and with damage like this from a jump in, how could I ever say no? Knockdown cancels are nothing mind-blowing, but I find their implications interesting, and who knows, maybe the extra damage from both hits can close out a game. With how similar this current glitch is to the previous one, I like to think of floating as its distant sibling. If a cornered enemy gets hit by a standing normal and a projectile on the same frame, they will briefly remain stuck in the air. Since this is never supposed to happen, the game believes that the aerial character is grounded, allowing them to attack or even block. Strings involving ground normals into air normals and then back into ground normals not only look awesome, but they do solid damage too. Interestingly, the glitch handbook states that with the exception of Super Turbo, this is possible in every Street Fighter 2 revision, even ones that run on the CPS-2 board. Floating isn't something viable you'll see in real matches, but for the purposes of combo videos that push the limits of the game's engine, they're fantastic. With all that out of the way, it's now time to analyze one of my favorite World Warrior glitches. That might make it sound severe and like it would impact the world economy, but it's actually just a simple developer oversight. When you make it to Ryu stage in arcade mode as player 1, make sure to lose the fight on purpose. At this point, continue as player 2, and when you're on the character select screen, choose Ryu as your fighter. After this, you'll be forced to fight against Ryu while playing as him. This hardly seems attention-worthy, but you have to keep in mind that World Warrior never supported mirror matches, so if you really wanted to play as Ken but your friend chose him before you, then you were out of luck. After getting this glitch to work, I wondered if it was possible for mirror matches with other characters to take place, but if you try this, the game will load in Ryu to prevent any funny business, even if you were just battling another fighter. It's clear to see that the developers forgot to switch out Ryu for someone else when continuing as player 2, proving that mirror matches function perfectly fine within World Warrior's engine. Mirror matches would return as an official feature from Champion Edition onwards, but its humble beginnings can be found way back in 1991. When everyone's favourite patriot takes a break from fighting sumo wrestlers, green beast men, and low-income martial artists, Guile's favourite pastime is to destroy the inner workings of the universe, with these glitches being downright iconic within the Street Fighter community. If you perform a medium punch throw and cancel the first frames of the animation into a flash kick, the enemy will become glued to Guile, and this is known as the handcuffs glitch. From here, you want to perform the stance glitch. Hold back to charge a sonic boom, input forward heavy kick, and then finish the sonic boom input. If performed correctly, Guile will become frozen in a manner that leaves him forever staring into the sun. Performing a flash kick will escape this state, and if you want the enemy to be normal again, perform the stance bug, but press heavy punch one frame after heavy kick. This will trigger a forward throw, ending all glitch-related shenanigans. However, if you want to pursue the chaotic evil route, charge a flash kick, input a heavy punch throw, and then finish the special input. Upon completion, the game will reset and bring you back to the attract screen. Don't ask me why this happens, because I genuinely don't know, but I love it. That's not all though, as in other World Warrior revisions, both fighters will begin scrolling through various dimensions. I'm not sure how this happens, but the game somehow loaded E Honda over the place of Guile. Initiating these glitches on actual hardware wouldn't be the nicest thing to do, but if you're on an emulator and you have some time to kill, they're gloriously broken. As these next bugs are somewhat alike, I've decided to group them together in one section. When fighting Vega in World Warrior, you might notice that despite being knocked over by a sweep, you can continue attacking him during his recovery animation. A universal rule of Street Fighter is that characters are invincible during this period, but I think the developers forgot to remove Vega's hitbox as he's rising. This leads to Vega exclusive combo routes, and with how much money he stole from me as a kid, I view this as karmic justice. Moving forward to Champion Edition, Dhalsim experiences the same phenomenon when falling to the ground. If you time an attack right, a juggle combo can begin, leading to easy wins. Call me crazy, but I think that these bugs may very well be the first fighting game OTG and juggle combo respectively. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I can't think of any pre-1991 fighters that feature these mechanics, intentional or otherwise. By selecting the Master of All Narcissists, Vega, and making it to the Barrel bonus stage in Champion Edition, you have the ability to perform a bizarre-looking glitch using the most powerful technique of them all, backflips. By destroying either the left or right barrels on the ground, Vega can stand in their place, and if you perform a backflip, it's possible to seriously mess up his coordinates. Or at least you can try. Believe me, I tried so many times to get this bug to work, but I just couldn't. Thankfully, Error1 created a video demonstrating what this looks like in action, and it looks like something out of an analog or cosmic horror. With how simple the glitch is to perform, I'm not sure why I wasn't able to land it. My speculation is that it only works on specific versions of the title, and that I was playing a variant that removed this bug, but I'm not 100% sure if this is the case. At any rate, this exploit represents what happens when sprites don't align with their programming in old-school fighting games, and if the potential motion sickness doesn't bother you, seeing Vega fly at Mach speeds is quite funny. This next bug is one that I'd never heard of before making this video, and it serves as a way for Super Street Fighter 2's Zangief to be even more terrifying. His most iconic attack is the spinning pile driver, but if you press the kick button after a 360 motion when up close, it becomes the atomic suplex. For whatever reason, if Zangief is forced into a position where he can input a reversal, performing the medium atomic suplex against a grounded opponent will teleport them into the grab. As long as the enemy can theoretically be grabbed normally, there's nothing stopping Zangief from welcoming them into his warm embrace. Unfortunately, this only works on certain versions of the game, and I just wasn't able to get them up and running on my emulator. I don't know why this only applies to the Special Moves medium variant, but I believe it has trouble calculating the distance between characters. This glitch removes the Russian wrestler's weakness of being ineffective when at a distance, and it's a good idea to sometimes take damage on purpose to instantly win the ground war. On the topic of Zangief, Final Atomic Buster has a bug that's far more confusing than the previous one. If the super startup animation plays out while the opponent is behind Zangief, things can go kind of haywire. Setting this up is difficult, but the glitch guidebook suggests Bison standing light punch into reversal final atomic buster as the most consistent method. Even though Zangief clearly failed to grab Bison, his attack animation continues as normal, with the final blow connecting no matter what. Slightly off topic, but this reminds me of his full-screen SPD from Street Fighter II Shanglong Edition. The only difference is that the Super Turbo exploit requires a full bar of meter, but they both look amazing. With how precise the glitch's setup has to be, I wouldn't bet on it happening in real matches, but it's absolutely one of the more puzzling looking ones. If you thought that was the only glitch involving reversal supers, you've got another thing coming. For reasons beyond my understanding, Ken, Dhalsim, and Sagat don't have the ability to pull these off. If you try, they just do whatever special move they inputted last. So for example, if I do a medium Tatsu with Ken and then attempt a reversal super, which has a totally different input by the way, the Tatsu will still come out even if I press punch. The same phenomenon applies to Tiger Knee, Yoga Blast, and any special you can think of really, even the aerial ones. Yep, Ken can do his air Tatsu on the ground, that's how much this glitch impacts the game. Hell, you can even ignore the fireball limit and have multiple projectiles on screen at once. Reversals and Super Turbo are already really hard to land, and this only punishes those technical enough to make them consistent. Dhalsim and T-Hawk may be on opposite ends of the tier list, but what unites them is their love for weird hitboxes. When performing T-Hawk's crouching medium punch, you'll notice that the hurtbox meant for his head appears in front of it, meaning opponents can damage him without actually making contact. This is one of Super Turbo's more infamous glitches, and I can imagine that many players have avoided this normal in neutral for this sole reason. On the flip side, Dhalsim's Yoga Blast has its first active frame positioned so that it's behind him. As this special is an anti-air, I guess it can be useful for catching enemies who attempt forward jumps. I wasn't able to find proper explanations as to why these take place, but they're probably the result of a minor programming error. If you take anything away from this video, it should be to never whiff T-Hawk's crouching medium punch, your life depends on it. Remember how I mentioned hit stop when discussing CPS1 chains? Well, it's back with a vengeance. Whenever you successfully attack the enemy, the game is supposed to pause for around 10 frames, and if you cancel this attack for a combo, the following move will come out after the pause. Blanca's vertical rolling attack, DJ's machine gun upper, and Old Bison's head stomp all ignore this rule however, so they can come out immediately. When under the right conditions, these fighters can perform lightning fast combos that shred through life bars. Unlike most glitches that are contained within a particular version of Street Fighter II, these attacks trigger the bug in Hyper Fighting, Champion Edition, Super Street Fighter II, and Super Turbo. Bypassing hit stop is one of the most consistent exploits I've seen within this line of games, and I'm intrigued as to why Bison, Blanca, and DJ are the only affected fighters. For those not in the know about Super Turbo's old characters, they're supposed to be the quote-unquote original versions of these fighters taken from previous games, and there are two giveaways that they're different. Their lack of meter on the bottom of the screen, and their original color palettes. If you play as a new character, it's impossible to revert back to their old costume, but fear not, because this current bug is here to save the day. First off, select the character you want to play as and enter arcade mode. Intentionally lose the first game, and when time is counting down, the other player should press start. When on the select screen, you should press start to rejoin the game, and wait for the invisible timer to select your fighter. As every button in the game corresponds to a unique color, pressing nothing forces the game to go with what you had before, leading to a new character having their old palette. Admittedly, this process is kind of convoluted, but if all you want is new Chun-Li in her iconic blue dress, then you have no other choice. Upon defeating the enemy in Super Turbo, your fighter is forced into a neutral position where inputs are ignored, ensuring that their victory animation can activate with no issues, but Ken spits in the face of this notion. If you perform one of his crazy kicks as the round ends, you can cancel its recovery into another one, and so on and so forth. Basically, you're repeating crazy kicks for as long as you want, and this even works with time overs. With that said, the kick's timing are very strict, and you'll have to manually readjust for the change in speed during a knockout. In theory, Ken can stall the match for as long as he wants, and although this bug isn't insane or anything, I still think it's hilarious. Look at him go! The final glitch we'll be covering today involves a mix of super KOs and time overs. Whenever you dump your meter to get the kill, all background graphics are suddenly switched to flashes of white light, and the super combo finish point flies on screen. This is Super Turbo's way of saying that it's gotten the memo about how the enemy was defeated. Conversely, time overs do no such thing, as the background will remain unchanged and the characters remain standing. But what about when you combine the two? If time runs out during a super that is guaranteed to defeat the enemy, well, the game believes that it did, so the super screen appears. Even though the enemy clearly has life to spare, the title's code chooses to ignore this, awarding you with both a super combo and time over victory at once. While playing around with this glitch in training mode, I realized that when the timer hits 0, neither player can do anything, including blocking attacks. At first, I thought this would be a guaranteed way to tack on some extra damage against a grounded opponent and win by using the time over glitch, but it seems the developers included a failsafe where supers that technically win the match don't give wins to the wrong player. In other words, the player with the most life will always win a time over, even with this glitch thrown into the mix. And those are all the glitches in today's video. Whenever I make these types of glitch videos, I always panic about games not having enough major glitches to make the video worth watching, but I feel that Street Fighter 2 has the perfect balance of glitches that vary in severity. Whether you're performing aerial blanca balls or freezing the arcade machine with Guile, players of all skill levels can execute some tasty bugs if they're so inclined, and I had a great time researching all of this chaos. With how old some of these games are, it's easier than ever to fire them up on PC or even mobile phones, so you're only a click away from testing these exploits out for yourself. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you and your time, and I hope you had fun, and I hope you learned something. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.